The termination letter was dated a Tuesday. I remember that specifically because Tuesday was the day I ran the weekly payroll reconciliation, and I had been in the middle of running it when HR called and asked me to come to the third floor. I saved my work, closed my laptop, walked to the elevator. The HR director, a woman named Gail Perkins who had been at the company for 3 years and who had the particular quality of someone who has been asked to do something she finds distasteful but has decided her mortgage is more important than her discomfort, was waiting outside conference room 3C with a manila folder and an expression that was trying very hard to be neutral. She did not make eye contact when she handed me the folder. The first line read, "Due to documented performance concerns and a pattern of conduct inconsistent with Hargrove Financial Group's standards of professional behavior, your employment is terminated effective immediately." I had been at Hargrove Financial Group for 15 years. I had never received a single negative performance review. I read the letter twice, folded it, put it in my bag. Then I said, "I'll need a box for my desk." Gail Perkins looked at the floor. "Of course. My name is Claudette Morrow. I am 49 years old, and for 15 years I was controller at Hargrove Financial Group, a mid-sized financial services firm based in Charlotte, North Carolina. We managed institutional investment accounts, corporate treasury services, and a growing private wealth division that had been the firm's primary revenue driver for the last 6 years. We were not a household name. We were the kind of company that managed other people's household names, pension funds, endowments, the treasury accounts of regional manufacturers who needed someone careful and precise to watch their money. Careful and precise was my entire professional identity. In 15 years, I had rebuilt Hargrove's internal audit function from a quarterly review process into a continuous monitoring system that caught discrepancies in real time. Before I built it, the firm had missed a $340,000 vendor billing error for 11 months. After I built it, the longest any discrepancy went undetected was 4 days. I had also implemented the Hargrove Payroll Integrity Protocol, a reconciliation framework that cross-referenced every payroll disbursement against active employee records, tax filings, and benefits enrollment data. It was the system that was supposed to make what I eventually found impossible. It had not made it impossible. It had made it visible. I had also renegotiated our external audit relationship with Deloitte in 2019, bringing the annual engagement fee down from $890,000 to $640,000 by restructuring the scope of work and bringing more of the preliminary fieldwork in-house. The CFO at the time had called it the best cost management outcome the finance department had produced in a decade. That CFO had retired in 2021. His replacement had arrived 6 months later. I had missed my daughter's high school graduation ceremony in 2020 because we were in the middle of a regulatory filing that could not wait. I had taken 11 vacation days in 15 years. Not 11 per year. 11 total. My desk had a plant that my assistant had been watering for so long she had started calling it hers, which I considered fair. I tell you this not for sympathy. I tell you this so you understand what 15 years of careful, precise, documented work looks like. And so you understand what it means when someone decides that work is a threat rather than an asset. The new CFO's name was Richard Calloway. He was 58, had come from a regional bank in Raleigh, and had the management style of someone who had spent his career being the smartest person in rooms that did not have very high standards for smart. He was not incompetent. He was something more specific than that. He was competent enough to know what he didn't understand, and insecure enough to resent the people who did. He arrived in March of 2021. By April, he had restructured the finance department's reporting lines so that my team reported to him directly rather than to the board's audit committee, which was the arrangement that had existed for 9 years and that the audit committee had specifically requested when they hired me. I noted the change. Said nothing. By June, he had started attending my weekly reconciliation reviews, which he had never done before and which he was not required to do. He would sit at the end of the conference table in the small meeting room we used for those sessions. We called it the fishbowl because it had glass walls on 3 sides and no privacy. And he would ask questions that were designed to sound like oversight and functioned as interruption. My senior accountant, a meticulous and quietly exasperated man named Franklin Osei, who had been with me for 7 years and who communicated his feelings primarily through the speed at which he typed, would look at his keyboard when Calloway asked a question and type slightly faster than necessary. I noticed. I said nothing. Then, in September of 2021, Hargrove Financial Group hired a new director of corporate development. His name was Tyler Vance. He was 34 years old. He was Richard Calloway's nephew. I know the second fact because it was not disclosed in the hiring announcement, which described Tyler as a seasoned corporate strategy professional with a background in business development and stakeholder engagement. I know it because Franklin found it in a LinkedIn connection search 3 days after Tyler arrived and came to my office and closed the door. Calloway's nephew, Franklin said. Are you certain? His mother is Calloway's sister. It's on her Facebook page. Family reunion photo, July 4th, both of them tagged. I looked at Franklin for a moment. Thank you. What do you want to do with that? Nothing yet, I said. File it. Franklin filed it. I went back to work. Tyler Vance arrived wearing a suit that cost more than my monthly car payment and carrying a leather portfolio that he opened in every meeting and never wrote in. He had the particular confidence of someone who has never been in a room where his presence required justification, because the person who controlled the room had always been someone who loved him. In his first week, he sat in on a treasury management review and referred to our liquidity coverage ratio as our cash flow optimization index. Our treasury analyst, a sharp and perpetually undercaffeinated woman named B. Holloway, who had passed her CFA on the first attempt and had very little patience for imprecision, looked at me across the table. I looked at my notes. The optimization index is looking healthy, Tyler said, nodding at the screen. B wrote something on her notepad. She turned it slightly toward me. It said, "That's not a thing." I did not respond. I wrote my own note and kept it to myself. In his second week, Tyler presented a strategic growth framework to the executive team that was, in structure and content, a repackaged version of the market expansion analysis our business development team had produced in 2019. He had changed the formatting and added a new title slide. The analysis itself, including 3 proprietary data points that our team had developed through client interviews, was reproduced almost verbatim. The business development team's director, a careful man named Marcus Webb who had been at Hargrove for 8 years and who had the quality of someone who chooses his battles with great precision, came to my office afterward. He used our 2019 analysis, Marcus said. I saw, word for word in 2 sections. I know. Are you going to say something? I looked at Marcus. Document it. Date, time, which sections, which document. Send it to me in writing. He looked at me for a moment. You're building a file. I'm being thorough, I said. It's what I do. He sent me the documentation that afternoon. I added it to a folder I had started in September, the day Franklin told me about the LinkedIn search. Tyler Vance had been at Hargrove for 4 months when I found the first ghost. I want to be precise about what I mean by that. A ghost employee is exactly what it sounds like, a name in the payroll system attached to a bank account, receiving regular disbursements, with no corresponding human being showing up to work, filing timesheets, or appearing in any HR record as an active employee. The name exists on paper. The money moves. Nobody asks questions because the name looks like every other name in a system that processes hundreds of disbursements every cycle. The Hargrove Payroll Integrity Protocol was designed to catch exactly this. It cross-referenced every disbursement against active HR records, benefits enrollment, and tax filing data. If a name appeared in payroll but not in HR, the system flagged it. If a name appeared in HR but had a termination date that predated the most recent disbursement, the system flagged it. In January of 2022, the system flagged a name. The name was Daniel Reeves. According to the payroll record, Daniel Reeves was a senior business development associate, hired in October of 2019, receiving a biweekly disbursement of $4,800. According to the HR system, Daniel Reeves did not exist. There was no hire record, no benefits enrollment, no tax withholding form, no employee ID. There was only the bank account the money was going to. I pulled the full disbursement history. Daniel Reeves had been receiving $4,800 every 2 weeks since October of 2019. 26 disbursements per year. For 27 months. I did the math. Then I did it again, because the number was large enough that I wanted to be certain. $345,600. I sat with that number for a moment. Then I pulled the account setup record. Every payroll account at Hargrove required an authorization signature from a department head and a secondary approval from the finance office. The authorization signature on Daniel Reeves's account setup was Tyler Vance's. Tyler Vance, who had not joined Hargrove until September of 2021, who had signed an account setup form dated October of 2019, 2 years before he worked here. I looked at that date for a long time. Then I opened the system and searched for every payroll account that had been authorized by Tyler Vance. I found 4 more. 5 ghost employees in total. 5 names. 5 bank accounts. 5 authorization signatures from a man who had not been employed at Hargrove when 3 of those accounts were created. The signatures on the earlier accounts were not Tyler's. They were close, same last name, different first initial. R. Vance. Richard Calloway's middle name is Robert. I know this because it is on his employment contract, which I had reviewed when he joined in 2021 as part of the standard finance department onboarding documentation review. R. Vance. I sat in my office for 11 minutes. I know it was 11 minutes because I was watching the clock on my computer screen and I needed to be precise about the time I had spent with this information before I decided what to do with it. Then I opened a new folder on my personal encrypted drive, which I maintained separately from the company network and had used for personal professional documentation for 12 years. I exported every record I had found, the disbursement histories, the account setup forms, the authorization signatures, the HR cross-reference showing no corresponding employee records. I added the date and time of each export to a log file. Then I pulled the full 3-year disbursement history for all 5 accounts. The total was $1,412,800. $1.4 million. Over 3 years. Through 5 names that did not correspond to any human being who had ever worked at Hargrove Financial Group. I printed nothing. I saved everything to the encrypted drive. I closed the system. I went home at my normal time. I did not tell Franklin. I did not tell B. I did not tell Marcus. I called my attorney that evening. Her name was Vivian Carr, and she specialized in financial fraud and employment law, and she had the quality of someone who has heard a great many things that would surprise most people and is no longer surprised by any of them. I walked her through what I had found. She was quiet for a moment. You have the account setup forms with the signatures. Yes. And the disbursement history going back 3 years. Yes. And the HR cross-reference showing no corresponding employee records. Yes. Claudette. Her voice was careful. This is not an internal audit finding. This is a federal matter. I know. Before you take this anywhere inside the company, I want you to understand what you're dealing with. Wire fraud. Potentially RICO if there's a pattern of enterprise. This is FBI territory. I know that too. So why are you calling me before you call them? I said, because I want to know what my rights are before I do anything. And because I want to know what happens to me if I report this internally and the company decides I'm the problem. She was quiet for exactly 3 seconds. That's the right question. What's the answer? The answer is that federal whistleblower protections under the Sarbanes-Oxley Act cover employees who report financial fraud to federal authorities or to internal supervisors. If you report internally and they retaliate, that retaliation is itself a federal violation. And if they fire me before I can report externally, then the retaliation claim becomes part of the federal case. She paused. But Claudette, if you report internally first, you give them the opportunity to destroy evidence. I thought about that. So I should go to the FBI first. I think you should talk to the FBI before you talk to anyone at Hargrove. Yes. How do I do that? I have a contact at the Charlotte field office, she said. I'll make a call tomorrow morning. Thank you. Claudette. Her voice shifted slightly. How long have you been sitting on this? Since this afternoon. And you haven't told anyone at the company? No. Good. Don't. I didn't. Vivian called me the next morning at 8:15. The Charlotte field office will see you Thursday at 2. I'll be with you. Okay. Bring everything you have. The full export. The log file. Everything. It's already organized. She paused. Of course it is. I went to work on Wednesday. Ran the weekly reconciliation. Attended 2 meetings. Answered my emails. Said nothing to anyone. On Thursday morning, I came in at my normal time. At 9:30, Gail Perkins called and asked me to come to the 3rd floor. I saved my work. Closed my laptop. Walked to the elevator. The termination letter was in the manila folder. Performance concerns. Conduct inconsistent with professional standards. Effective immediately. I read it twice. Folded it. Put it in my bag. I'll need a box for my desk, I said. I packed my desk in 20 minutes. Franklin stood in the doorway of his office and watched. He did not say anything. His expression said everything. Bea appeared at the end of the hallway and stopped when she saw the box. She looked at me. I shook my head once, very slightly, and she understood that the shake meant, not here, not now, I am fine. I was fine. I carried the box to my car. Put it in the trunk. Sat in the driver's seat for exactly 2 minutes. Then I called Vivian. They fired me this morning, I said. A pause. Before the Thursday meeting. Yes. Do you still have the encrypted drive? It's in my bag. Good. Don't go back into the building. Don't respond to any company communications. Come to my office at noon and we'll go to the FBI together. I'll be there. Claudette. Her voice was steady. They just made this significantly worse for themselves. I know, I said. I started the car. Pulled out of the parking garage. The Charlotte skyline was doing what it does on a Thursday morning in February, flat light, low clouds, the particular gray of a city that hasn't decided what kind of day it's going to be at. I had a 2 o'clock appointment with the FBI. I had 15 years of documentation on an encrypted drive in my bag. And somewhere on the 3rd floor of Hargrove Financial Group, Richard Calloway and Tyler Vance were sitting in their offices, having just fired the only person in the building who knew exactly what they had done. My phone buzzed at 11:47. A text from a number I didn't recognize. It said, Claudette, this is Tyler. I think there's been a miscommunication about your departure, and I'd really like to connect to discuss a potential transition consulting arrangement before you make any decisions about next steps. A transition consulting arrangement. I read it once. Then I forwarded it to Vivian, put my phone in my bag, and kept driving. At 11:52, Franklin texted from his personal phone. He never texted from his personal phone. It said, they're in Calloway's office right now. Door closed. I can hear Calloway on the phone, but not what he's saying. B says the payroll system threw an error flag this morning on 5 accounts and IT can't figure out why. They're asking where you are. I read that twice. The payroll system had thrown an error flag. Of course it had. The Hargrove Payroll Integrity Protocol ran automatically every Thursday morning. It had flagged the same 5 accounts it had flagged for me in January because the accounts were still active, the disbursements were still processing, and the HR cross-reference still showed no corresponding employee records. The system I had built was still doing exactly what I had built it to do. The difference was that I was no longer there to quietly manage what it found. I texted Franklin back, document everything you observe. Dates, times, exact words. Send nothing to company email. Use your personal phone only. He replied immediately, already on it. Claudette, how bad is this? I thought about $1,412,800. About 5 names that didn't exist. About R. Vance on 3 account setup forms dated 2 years before Tyler Vance walked through the door. I thought about my 2 o'clock appointment. That enough, I typed. Stay calm. Dear job. I'll be in touch. I put the phone in my bag. The clouds outside the windshield had made their decision. It was going to rain. I kept driving. Vivian's office was on the 14th floor of a building on South Tryon Street, 12 minutes from Hargrove's parking garage. I know the drive time because I had made it in exactly 12 minutes, which meant I arrived at 10:09 a.m. with 4 hours and 51 minutes before my 2 o'clock appointment with the FBI. I spent those hours at Vivian's conference table organizing documentation I had already organized, because that is what I do when I am waiting for something large to happen. I make sure everything is in order. I check the order twice. Then I check it again. At 1:45, we drove to the Charlotte field office. The meeting lasted 2 hours and 17 minutes. I know because I was watching the clock on the wall of the conference room they put us in, which had the particular institutional quality of a room designed to make people feel that the conversation happening inside it is serious. It was serious. I presented the documentation in the order I had organized it: the disbursement histories, the account setup forms, the authorization signatures, the HR cross-reference, the log file showing every export with date and timestamps. The two agents in the room, a woman named Special Agent Torres and a man whose name I did not catch because he said it quietly and I did not ask him to repeat it, asked questions that were precise and methodical, and that told me, without them saying so directly, that they had seen this pattern before. At the end, Special Agent Torres said, "Ms. Morrow, we're going to need you to not discuss this with anyone at Hargrove Financial Group." "I haven't," I said. "And we're going to need access to the encrypted drive." I brought a copy. I slid a sealed envelope across the table. "The original is in a safety deposit box. Vivian has the key." Special Agent Torres looked at the envelope, then at me. "You've done this before." "I've been careful for 15 years, I said. "It's not the same thing." She almost smiled. "No, it's not." We left at 4:22. Vivian walked me to my car. "Now we wait," she said. "How long?" "Federal investigations move at their own pace. Could be weeks. Could be months. And in the meantime? In the meantime, you have a wrongful termination claim, a whistleblower retaliation claim, and 15 years of documented performance history that directly contradicts every word in that termination letter." She looked at me. "You're not the one who should be worried right now." I drove home, made dinner, went to bed. I did not hear from Hargrove that night. I did not hear from them the next day or the day after that. Tyler Vance did not text again. Richard Calloway did not call. The silence had the quality of a building that has just realized it has a structural problem and is trying to decide whether to tell anyone. By the end of the second week, the building had started to crack in places they hadn't anticipated. The first crack was technical, and it was the one I had expected. The Hargrove Payroll Integrity Protocol ran every Thursday. It had flagged the 5 ghost accounts every Thursday since I left, because the accounts were still active and the disbursements were still processing, and nobody at Hargrove had the system access or the institutional knowledge to understand what the flags meant or how to clear them. The flags generated automated exception reports that went to the finance department's shared inbox. Before I left, I had been the person who reviewed those reports. After I left, they sat in the inbox, unread, accumulating. Franklin texted me on the second Thursday. Personal phone as instructed. "The exception reports are stacking up." IT came down this morning and spent 2 hours trying to figure out why the system keeps flagging the same 5 accounts. They can't find the accounts in the active employee directory because the accounts aren't in the active employee directory. They're asking Calloway. Calloway told them to escalate to the payroll vendor. I read that and thought, escalating to the payroll vendor is the single worst thing Richard Calloway could have done, because the payroll vendor's escalation process involves a compliance review, and a compliance review involves documentation requests. And documentation requests create a paper trail that does not belong to Hargrove. I texted Franklin, document the IT visit. Date, time, who was there, what they said. Nothing else. He replied, already done. The second crack was relational, and it came from a direction I had not specifically anticipated, though I should have. Hargrove's largest institutional client was a regional pension fund called the Piedmont Municipal Employees Retirement System. They managed $2.1 billion in assets through us. Their relationship with Hargrove was built on 2 things: performance and trust. Performance was managed by the investment team. Trust was managed, in large part, by the finance department's quarterly reporting package, which I had designed and produced for 11 years, and which the pension fund's board of trustees had come to rely on for its precision and consistency. The Q1 reporting package was due on the 15th of the month. I had been terminated on the 6th. Franklin produced the package. He was meticulous and capable and had worked alongside me for 7 years, and the package he produced was accurate. But it was formatted differently than the previous 43 packages because Franklin had not been the one who built the template. And the template lived in a folder structure on my personal drive that I had not been given the opportunity to transfer before Gail Perkins handed me a manila folder and asked me to pack my desk. The pension fund's finance director, a man named Gerald Oates who had been reviewing Hargrove's quarterly packages for 9 years and who had the particular quality of someone who notices when something is 1 centimeter off from where it was last quarter, called Hargrove's client relations team on the 16th. He asked why the format had changed. Client relations escalated to Richard Calloway. Calloway called Gerald Oates directly. I know this because Marcus Webb, who managed the Piedmont relationship on the business development side, texted Franklin, who texted me. The call did not go well. Calloway told Gerald Oates that the format change was part of a reporting modernization initiative and that the new format would better align with industry-standard transparency benchmarks. Gerald Oates asked what benchmarks specifically. Calloway said he would have his team follow up with the details. Gerald Oates said he would like those details before the Q2 package, and that in the meantime he would be raising the format change with Piedmont's board of trustees at their next meeting. A pension fund board of trustees raising a concern about a financial services firm's reporting consistency is not a small thing. It is the kind of thing that gets noted in meeting minutes. The kind of thing that, if it appears in meeting minutes, becomes part of the record that regulators review when they are deciding whether a firm's client relationships are stable. The third crack was financial, and it arrived from a direction that had nothing to do with me and everything to do with what Tyler Vance had been doing for 3 years. The FBI moved faster than Vivian had predicted. On the 19th day after my termination, Vivian called me at 7:30 a.m. They executed a search warrant this morning, she said. At Hargrove and at Tyler Vance's residence. Simultaneously. I sat with that for a moment. That was fast. The documentation you provided was unusually complete. They didn't need much additional fieldwork. She paused. Tyler Vance was taken in for questioning this morning. He has not been formally arrested yet, but his attorney has been contacted. And Calloway? The warrant covers financial records going back 4 years. His name is on 3 of the account setup forms. Another pause. Claudette, this is moving into public territory. The Charlotte Observer has a reporter who covers federal court filings. When the warrant becomes public record, which it will, this is going to be a news story. I thought about that. When? Days. Maybe less. I said, okay. Are you ready for that? I've been ready since February, I said. And I meant it in a different way than I had meant it the first time I said something like that, which was the night before I sent 41 pages of documentation to a board chair. This time I meant it in the way of someone who has been careful for 15 years and has finally arrived at the moment where the carefulness is the only thing standing between her and a very large problem. The carefulness was not the problem. It never had been. My phone rang at 9:14 that same morning. A number I recognized. Richard Calloway's direct line. I let it ring. He called again at 9:31. And at 10:02. At 10:02, he left a voicemail. I listened to it once. Claudette, this is Richard. I think we may have gotten off on the wrong foot with the transition, and I'd like to discuss a path forward that works for everyone. I'm prepared to offer a consulting arrangement, significant compensation, flexible terms. I think there's a way to resolve this that's mutually beneficial. Please call me back. Mutually beneficial. I forwarded the voicemail to Vivian and did not call back. At 2:15 that afternoon, Tyler Vance called from a number I didn't recognize. I know it was him because he left a voicemail too. His was shorter. Claudette, it's Tyler. I think there's been a misunderstanding about some of the payroll accounts, and I'd really like to talk before this gets any more complicated. I can make it worth your while. Please. Please. He said please. I forwarded that one to Vivian as well. She called back in 4 minutes. Do not respond to either of them, she said. I wasn't going to. Good. And Claudette, Calloway's offer of a consulting arrangement made after your termination and after the FBI executed a search warrant is going to be very interesting to the agents when I share it with them. I assumed you would. I already did, she said. The Charlotte Observer ran the story on a Thursday. Federal agents execute search warrant at Charlotte financial firm amid payroll fraud investigation. The story named Hargrove Financial Group. It named Tyler Vance. It described the investigation as involving alleged fraudulent payroll disbursements totaling more than $1.4 million over a 3-year period. It did not name me. It did not need to. By Friday morning, Hargrove's board of directors had convened an emergency session. I know this because Marcus Webb called Franklin, who called me on his personal phone. The board is meeting right now, Franklin said. Calloway is not in the room. Who's running it? The board chair. A woman named Patricia Hale. She's been on the board for 6 years. She came in from outside. She's not connected to Calloway. Patricia Hale. I had met her once at a firm-wide leadership event in 2020. She had asked me 3 questions about the internal audit function, all of them precise, and had listened to the answers without interrupting. Franklin, I said. How's the team? A pause. Holding. BA's been running the exception reports manually since you left. She figured out the 5 accounts on her own last week. She hasn't told anyone except me. Tell her to document everything she found and when she found it. Personal email only. She already did, he said. She said you would want her to. I thought about B. Holloway, who had passed her CFA on the first attempt and had very little patience for imprecision, sitting at her desk and manually running exception reports that the system I built was supposed to run automatically. Because the person who built the system was no longer there to manage what it found. Tell her I said thank you, I said. She knows, Franklin said. Patricia Hale called Vivian that afternoon. Vivian called me at 4:47. I want to note the time because it is the same time that matters in every story like this one. For 47, the hour when things that have been building all day finally arrive. The board wants to meet with you, Vivian said. When? Monday. In person. They're prepared to discuss terms. What kind of terms? They didn't specify. But Patricia Hale asked me directly whether you would be open to returning to the firm in a leadership capacity. I looked out my window. Charlotte was doing what it does on a Friday afternoon in February. Flat light. The particular gray of a city that has just decided what kind of day it's going to be, and the answer is complicated. Tell her I'll be there Monday, I said. And tell her I'll be bringing my own terms. Vivian said I already told her that. What did she say? She said she expected nothing less. I spent the weekend preparing. Not anxiously. Methodically. The way I prepare everything. I wrote out my conditions in the order I intended to present them, with the specific numbers attached to each one, and I reviewed them twice and changed nothing because they were right the first time. Monday morning. Conference room pinnacle. That is not what Hargrove called their boardroom, but it is what I am calling it, because the room where you walk in and state your terms deserves a name that reflects what happens inside it. The actual name was the Hargrove Board Suite on the 7th floor, with a long mahogany table and windows that looked out over the intersection of South Tryon and East Trade and the particular quality of morning light that makes Charlotte look more resolved than it usually is. Patricia Hale was at the head of the table. 3 other board members I recognized from annual meetings. Vivian beside me. No Richard Calloway. No Tyler Vance. The absence of both of them told me the board had already made a decision about what this meeting was and what it was not. Patricia Hale said, Ms. Morrow. Thank you for coming. Of course. I want to be direct with you. The board has reviewed the situation in full. We are aware of the federal investigation. We are aware of the circumstances of your termination. And we are aware that the termination letter cited performance concerns that are not supported by 15 years of documented performance history. She said it plainly. No hedging. No corporate language designed to soften the edges of an admission. We would like you to return to Hargrove, she said, in a role that reflects your actual contribution to this firm. I appreciate that, I said. I have conditions. I assumed you would. Go ahead. I opened my folder. Chief Financial Officer. Permanent role, reporting directly to the board. Not through any executive who is not a board member. Patricia wrote something. Base salary of $380,000. That is 2.5 times my previous base. Signing bonus of $75,000. Equity participation at 0.5% over a 4-year vesting schedule. One of the other board members, a man named Howard Briggs who had been on the board for 4 years and who communicated primarily through very controlled facial expressions, looked at the equity line. His expression did not change. He wrote something. Full authority over the finance department, internal audit, and payroll operations. No executive overrides without board-level approval. No external consultants brought in to review or modify financial controls without my written consent. Understood, Patricia said. Franklin Osei is promoted to Director of Internal Audit with a 25% salary increase and a written acknowledgement from the board that his conduct during this period was exemplary. Patricia nodded. B. Holloway is promoted to Senior Financial Analyst with a 20% salary increase and the same written acknowledgement. Done, Patricia said. And I said, a formal incident report. Complete. Every account, every disbursement, every authorization signature, every date. Who knew what and when. Preserved in the board record and made available to the external auditors. The room went quiet. Howard Briggs said, carefully, a report of that nature, entered into the board record, will be reviewed by Deloitte in the next audit cycle. Yes. And potentially by regulators. Yes. That creates significant exposure for the firm. I looked at him. The fraud created the exposure. The report documents it accurately. Those are different things. He looked at Patricia. Patricia looked at the other 2 board members. The kind of exchange that takes 5 seconds and contains an entire conversation. Then Patricia said, the report will be completed. I'll chair it personally. Howard Briggs wrote something and did not object again. I said, then we have an agreement. Patricia extended her hand across the table. I shook it. Vivian, beside me, made a small sound that was not quite a sigh and not quite satisfaction. It was the sound of someone who has been in many rooms like this one and knows that the handshake is the moment everything that came before it becomes permanent. I walked out of the Hargrove board suite at 11:23 a.m. with a signed term sheet and a start date of the following Monday. I drove home. Made lunch. Called my daughter. She said, "How did it go?" "Well," I said. "Mom." Her voice had the particular quality it gets when she is trying to determine whether I am understating something. "How well?" "CFO," I said. She was quiet for exactly 2 seconds. Then she said, "I'm coming over for dinner." "I'll make something." "I'll bring wine." "Bring good wine," I said. "We've earned it." The following Monday, I arrived at Hargrove Financial Group at 8 a.m. Through the main entrance. Past the security desk. Into the elevator. 7th floor. Franklin was at his desk when I came around the corner. He stood up. He is not a man who stands up when people enter rooms. He stood up. "CFO," he said. "Director," I said. He sat back down and opened his laptop. I pulled the exception report queue. There are 43 unreviewed flags going back to the day you left. I've started categorizing them. Send me the categorization by noon. Already done, he said. I sent it this morning. Before you got here. Bea appeared from the other direction. She had the expression of someone who has been holding something together with both hands for 3 weeks and has just been told she can put it down. She said, "The payroll vendor compliance review is still open. They're waiting for a response from the finance department. I'll handle it this afternoon. I also found 2 additional accounts that weren't in your original 5, she said. I flagged them last week. I didn't know who to tell. I looked at her. You tell me. I know that now, she said. And she went back to her desk and started working, which is the highest compliment Bea Holloway knows how to give. Tyler Vance was arrested on a Wednesday, 6 weeks after the search warrant. The federal complaint listed 7 counts of wire fraud and 1 count of conspiracy. The total alleged fraudulent disbursements, including the 2 additional accounts Bea had found, came to $1,487,200. Richard Calloway was named as a co-conspirator. He resigned from Hargrove the same day the complaint was filed. His resignation letter, which I saw because it went through the board and the board chair shared it with me as the incoming CFO, cited personal reasons and a desire to pursue other opportunities. Personal reasons. He had been running ghost employees through a financial services firm's payroll for 3 years. The personal reason was that he was about to be indicted. He was not my problem anymore. He had not been my problem since the morning I drove out of the parking garage with an encrypted drive in my bag and a 2 o'clock appointment I intended to keep. 9 months later, Hargrove Financial Group looked like a company that had survived something serious and decided to become more careful because of it. The Hargrove Financial Integrity Framework was implemented in April. It was a governance document, approved by the board, that established mandatory dual authorization for all payroll account creation, quarterly cross-referencing of all active payroll accounts against HR records, and an independent audit of the payroll system by an external firm every 18 months. It was, in structure and philosophy, an expanded version of the Payroll Integrity Protocol I had built years earlier, the system that had found the ghost accounts in the first place. The system had worked. The failure had been human. The framework was designed to make the human failure harder to sustain. Franklin ran the internal audit function with the particular precision of someone who has spent 7 years watching how it should be done and has now been given the authority to do it himself. He had rebuilt the exception report review process, created a new escalation protocol that went directly to the board's audit committee, and implemented a documentation standard that required every finance team member to maintain a personal professional log of their work. He called it the Hargrove Accountability Standard. He had figured that out on his own. I did not comment on it. Some things don't need commentary. B was senior financial analyst. She had developed a new payroll reconciliation dashboard that made the cross-referencing process visible in real time, so that any discrepancy between payroll disbursements and HR records appeared on a screen that 3 people could see simultaneously. She had presented it to the board's audit committee in June. Patricia Hale had asked her 4 questions, all of them precise. B had answered all 4 without hesitation and had then, unprompted, walked the committee through 2 edge cases the dashboard had already caught. After the meeting, Patricia Hale stopped me in the hallway. "She's exceptional," she said. "I know," I said. "You built that team." "They built themselves," I said. "I just documented it." The formal incident report was completed in May and entered into the board record. It documented the full timeline, every ghost account, every disbursement, every authorization signature, every date. It documented the circumstances of my termination and the board's finding that the termination had been retaliatory and without documented basis. It documented the financial impact of the fraud and the disruption. Total financial impact, $3.2 million. That number included the fraudulent disbursements, the legal costs, the FBI investigation cooperation costs, the Deloitte audit scope expansion, the Piedmont relationship remediation, and the settlement Hargrove reached with me before I agreed to return. The settlement was $900,000. I want to be precise about that number because precision is the thing I do, and because $900,000 is not an abstraction. It is the number that represents 15 years of careful work, a termination letter that cited performance concerns that did not exist, and the specific cost of deciding that the person who found your fraud was more dangerous than the fraud itself. It was the wrong decision. It was an expensive wrong decision. And it was documented in the board record alongside every other decision that had been made in the 18 months before I walked back through the front door. Piedmont Municipal Employees Retirement System renewed their contract in August. Gerald Oates called me directly to confirm it. He said the Q2 package was back to the standard format. "It will stay that way," I said. "I know," he said. "That's why we're renewing." My life outside the building was better in ways I had not fully anticipated and would not have predicted if you had asked me on the morning I sat in my car in the parking garage with an encrypted drive in my bag and a 2 o'clock appointment with the FBI. I took a real vacation in July. 8 days. My phone was on, because I am who I am, but I checked it twice a day and nothing required my immediate attention, which is the specific quality of a department that has been built correctly. A department that runs when you're not in the room is a department that has been built to last. My daughter came with me for 4 of the 8 days. We went somewhere warm. She said, on the 3rd day, "You look like yourself." I've always looked like myself. "No," she said. "You looked like yourself minus something. Now you just look like yourself." I thought about that. About what the something was. About 15 years of carrying the specific weight of someone who has built things carefully and documented everything and waited, without drama, for the moment when the documentation would matter. The moment had come. The documentation had mattered. I thought about the termination letter sometimes. The manila folder. Gail Perkins looking at the floor. The first line, due to documented performance concerns and a pattern of conduct inconsistent with Hargrove Financial Group's standards of professional behavior. Documented performance concerns. The irony of that phrase, in a story that turned entirely on documentation, is the kind of thing that stays with you. They had used the word documented to describe concerns that did not exist, in a letter designed to remove the person who had documented everything that did. The documentation they were afraid of was already in a safety deposit box. It was already on its way to the FBI. It was already, in every way that mattered, beyond their reach. If you've ever been underestimated at work, I hope this story reminds you that quiet preparation always beats loud arrogance. If this resonated, like and subscribe. I share stories like this every week. And remember, when someone hands you a termination letter to silence what you know, make sure what you know is already somewhere they can't reach.